Hi, and welcome to Starting Nowhere. I'm your host, Brandon. Today, my guest is Tim Barker. Tim is a car salesman who's going to tell us the tricks of the trade and what to watch out for. He's also going to tell us what it's like to be a father of three girls in today's society where women aren't valued as highly as men, and what it was like to hear that his daughter had seen the George Floyd video. Please enjoy today's episode. All right, welcome, sir. How are you doing today, man?
I'm great. How are you?
Living the dream. Why don't you give everybody a heads up to who you are and maybe how we know each other?
I am Tim. I met Brandon at Moody. He worked in the shop with my ex-wife now, and we've just kind of stayed in touch ever since then. And I wanted to get involved whenever you had actually thrown out your request to speak with folks. I just wanted to get in on this. So, just a father of three who's hoping for better.
Now, when you say hoping for better, you mean you're hoping for more kids? Because three is a lot already, man.
Oh, no, not in the kid aspect, just in the life aspect as a whole. Kids, I'm done. If it wasn't for the lack of March Madness this year, I'd have already been snipped, but everybody tells me you got to do that during March Madness to get the 3 free days.
Oh, nice. Very nice. That's smart. I'd never thought about that. That's hilarious. Just for everybody who doesn't know, too, Moody is Moody Air Force Base in good old Valdosta, Georgia, a few hours north of here, where I was stationed for about 5 years. How long were you there? Probably 3?
We were there for, I guess it was 3.5-ish. Yeah. Maybe only 3.
And so I left Moody 10 years ago. And I think you may have left a little bit before me. When did you leave Moody or the Valdosta area anyways?
Late June, early July, 2009.
Okay, yeah. So you left like a year before I did. I left in July of 2010.
Yeah. Yep.
So tell me, is there anything that you miss about Valdosta, the area? Not specifically the people or anything like that you knew there, but just the area.
No, I mean, like the only thing that I missed is the only thing that you told me to leave out of it.
I'll tell you, man, I miss Cousins. Saturday, when we would watch Ohio State or any other football, we'd go to Cousins, get the teriyaki wings and the deep fried pizza rolls and everything. That's about the only thing I really think of when I think of missing Valdosta.
And the Alabama Slammers, man.
Yeah. Cousins had a lot of good stuff, man. We lived, like almost in walking distance or stumbling distance rather from it because you had to cross Bemis.
Yeah. Yep. The Bemis 500. I forgot all about that road, but
well, I was back there not too long ago, and man, that feels so much slower than it used to. Because I think they actually did. They lowered the speed limit down to like 35 now or something like that.
Wow. What was it? 55, and everybody did about 85.
To be honest with you, I don't even know what the speed limit was because you basically felt out traffic. That's all you did.
Yeah, you did. Right. It was wild. So with me, and since then, I mean, obviously I've been divorced since then. Remarried. I've been selling cars since 2012. Once I finally got my act together and stopped with the pity party of divorce. But met my current wife, Emily. We've got 2 kids together, and then one from, with my ex. But we got 3 kids, 13, 4, and 1. Lily's in school. She's in 8th grade now. Plays volleyball. Going to be driving next year because she lives in Montana, which is wild to think about. But
so Lily's 13 now?
Lily is 13 years old.
Dude, that's nuts. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. Like doing the simple math, that makes sense, but I just never had to, I guess, conceptualize that. That's nuts.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because she was just a little thing that we kept saying needed to get a job as a joke.
That's not a joke for me.
Need to get a job.
That's not a joke for me. I'm pro child labor for sure. Pro child labor. Get in the factories. Let's make some stuff in America again.
Right.
That's awesome though, man. I'm glad to hear the kids are all still growing up and everything like that. It's still weird, and that's where you start, like I said, you start to feel old when you hear your friends who you knew the kids as babies, and they're like, oh yeah, they're off to college next year and stuff, which is right around the corner. Which is
right around the corner. So wild.
Oh,
so
man.
wild.
So how's it feel to be back in the great state of Ohio?
Oh man, it's great here. The Midwest is just so different. In from South Georgia, the South in general. I mean, I like it. We have seasons. I'm sitting outside right now, and I'm like, it's been a beautiful day. I drove 2 hours today to get to my in-laws' house, and windows down the whole way, listening to Joe Rogan's podcasts and thinking about how gorgeous it is. And now I'm sitting out front, wondering, like, so I wonder if it's gonna rain. There's a very good possibility it's coming. So I love the Midwest. I love Ohio. It's it's still got, I love the people of the South, but I love the climate of the North. So.
Yeah, you got to find that happy medium somewhere. But I have to admit, I'm trying to think now. The last time I was back in Ohio was for my mother's 50th birthday. So it's been a couple years now.
Wow.
Yeah, so I haven't been back in a while.
How old is she now?
Well, I can't say that. I'm not trying to get killed.
Fair.
That was a trap.
But I feel like I celebrated like one of her milestone birthdays whenever she came to Valdosta.
It's certainly possible. As creepy as it'll sound, my mom probably would have turned 40 while I was in Valdosta, so it might have been her 40th or something like that. That might make sense.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Yeah. And now, if I remember correctly, you had a sister who was expecting around the time we left.
Yeah, you're right. Oh man, yeah, because Jaden is a 10 or 11 now too. So yeah, man, that was my oldest younger sister. So yeah, that's Jaden, man, great kid too. So now I have, let's see, 2, 3. From my mother's children, I have 4 nieces and nephews. And then from my father's children, I believe that I have 2 or maybe 3. I lose track of that one. We don't keep in touch as much as my mother's side, so I'm not sure.
Right.
But yeah, man, dang, I forgot about that too, because you were there. That was at my uncle's house.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to leave actually. Whenever you had found out about that, and your sister was there. I think your mom was in town too. And I want to say that it was that birthday.
Something like that.
It
sounds about right.
I think she was celebrating her birthday at your uncle's.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so yeah. So are they still in Dayton then?
No. So there's been the great exodus of Dayton that I was hoping for a long time ago. There's only my youngest sister is in Dayton still. So and then my nieces and nephews with her. And she actually stays in a property that I own up there in Dayton. So they're doing good. She's doing well, I should say. My mother and sisters actually coincidentally now live in Georgia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So my oldest and her daughter live in Atlanta, and my mother's in Ray City, just outside of Valdosta. She's staying with my uncle.
I forgot all about Ray City, but yeah, that is where your uncle lived.
Yeah, man. There's nothing to really remember about Ray City, so that's okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. So, yeah, I mean, I remember all these people now. It's coming back to me.
So let me ask you the question that I've been asking and flaunting over every parent in 2020. How's it been being home with those kids for all these months?
Man, it's been so awesome. I'll be honest, so with my work, I was sent home from work on the 23rd, and that's whenever quarantine started for us in my house. My wife's been working from home since March 13th. But it didn't really hit until I had to stay at home, and then the kids had to stay at home. And then I was like, holy cow, this is hard. This is really, really hard to be at home with the kids and not have any of the outlets. You know what I mean? Usually, we could, all right, the kids need to run off some energy. Let's go to the trampoline park. Let's go to the park. Let's do all this stuff. And all those things just kind of went out the window, and you had walks around the yard, around the block, or whatever. but with Lily living in Montana, she finally was able to come out in June to visit, and stayed until the middle part of last month. And it was great. We've just been obviously saving a lot of money, because you don't have to do all of those trampoline parks that cost an astronomical amount of money. But lots of saving of money, and then just lots of time with all the things that we wish that we have during the hustle and bustle of your normal everyday. And then to finally be able to get that. And then so many people have been like, oh, these kids just got to go back to school. And it's like, but why? Like, this is what we beg for on a day-to-day, and now we have it and we're going to complain about it. It just doesn't make any sense.
I'm sure I was going to share, sure I'll upset somebody when I say this, but it sounds like because you actually love your kids, you know what I mean? Maybe the situation's been a little bit better for you. Let me be clear. I know kids are hard no matter if you love them or not, and that's why I don't have any.
Right. Yeah, it's just, and it's not I don't think that I love my kids any more than the next, but yeah, it's one of those things where that realization of like, holy crap, this is a lot of damn work comes into play, and you're like, well, but it's worthwhile work. Like, my job is a lot of work. I do it every day. I go to work and I don't complain about it. So whenever it comes time to my kids, I love my kids. I like my job. I love my kids. And I'll stay home and take care of my kids rather than chase customers on a lot who are trying to get an extra $1,000 off a $10,000 off vehicle anyway. So I, they're not as easy to reason with as the customers at my dealership, but they, I don't know, kids have a way of making us feel like the things that we're worrying about don't matter anymore. So like, I've envied people like you during all of this, because it's like, he can do whatever he wants. He doesn't have to put down his phone. He doesn't have to put down the video games. He can go play basketball if he wants to by himself in a park. He doesn't have, don't have to worry about the other little being reliant on you. But at the same time, it's like, without that reliant little being, like, man, I have nothing to do and I am bored. So it's like, how many times can I mow the grass,
I think what you've kind of touched upon there, and one of the reasons that I always felt like we got along pretty well, is it's a matter of perspective, right? And so I think that you've got a pretty cool perspective about those things, because you're trying to take advantage of this time while you have it, because this is the time you were wishing you had throughout all that other stuff. And for me, it's the same thing, while I'm sitting at home now with not a lot of outlets like I used to, I got back into video gaming. I built myself a PC. I'm trying to find these hobbies that I've kind of put off, and since I got busy with work and everything else, and now try to pick those back up. So I think it's really a matter of perspective. Now, that doesn't mean I'm ignorant of the economic factors for a lot of people, but I just think that for people like us, we try to see the good where there is. And for you, again, getting to spend time with your kids, even though sometimes you may have had a break before, but now you're like, you got to get it all in 6 months and try to do what you can. And then when you go back to work and they go back to school, you'll remember these times, hopefully fondly.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this is the year that Lily didn't get to go to Kings Island, but like, at the same time, the year that Lily got to do so many other things that we would have never done had we been able to just go to Kings Island. It was an easy scapegoat,
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. So yeah, it's been, and yeah, like you say, the financial crisis and the financial burden that this has weighed on a lot of people, and I think that we have to acknowledge that whenever we're in the mindset that I have, but at the same time, like, that's if those people had it and I didn't, like, I don't want them to be just worrying about me. Like, I think that we have to be thankful for the blessings that we get, for the same reason. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I understand that there are people that are struggling and are going through things that are, unimaginable to me right now. But I think that it's almost, I think it's equally as selfish for us to not, acknowledge those blessings and that we get ourselves. If we don't acknowledge our own blessings, then do we really deserve them?
I'm right there with you, man. That's a pretty profound statement to make, but I think that's true, because sometimes we feel guilty about being happy in our own lives, because we know there's people who are unhappy in theirs. And they're not doing that for you. You know what I mean? If you're unhappy, something went bad for you on a date, it doesn't make their life inherently better or worse or anything like that. You got to find, like you said, appreciate your own blessings and be willing to try to help out others when you can. I think that's the best we can all do and hope for. So there's something you just said that reminded me, and again, this won't mean anything to anybody who's not really from Ohio, but so Paramount used to own Kings Island. They no longer own Kings Island. I have been back there, I think, since they stopped owning them. And what is your favorite knockoff name they have now? So for everybody who hasn't been to Kings Island before, Paramount, the movie studios, used to own it. So you had rides like Top Gun, The Outer Limits, any of their properties. And now Top Gun's called something like High Flight or some crap like that now. I don't know.
No, it's called the Bat.
The Bat?
Top Gun is the Bat now, and it sucks. It's a terrible ride. Like, it was a terrible ride at Top Gun, but it's still a terrible ride. But yeah, it's called the Bat now, and you've got to walk like a mile past everything else in the park to get. I don't know if you remember that from Top Gun.
Yeah.
It's in the same place as the park, but you had to walk so far to get to this ride. It's just terrible. It's not a good roller coaster at all. But. So yeah, I don't know. Favorite knockoff. Well, they used to have the Italian Job.
Yeah.
You remember that? And now they've changed it to Stunt Car.
Stunt Car.
But it's still got all of the same themes that go into the Italian Job. Like, they didn't change anything about the ride. Not one billboard on that ride got changed, but they just changed the name. So that's probably my favorite one, is the Italian Stunt Job.
That's amazing.
I hate that they changed Hanna-Barbera Land. It's now Planet Snoopy.
Wow. I didn't even know that, because obviously I don't have kids, so I never really went to that side of the park or whatever. That's hilarious. That's awesome.
Well, you actually have to go through that. Well, you don't have to, but it's like the quickest way now to get to the before this year, the biggest roller coaster in the park, you did have to go through there to get to it, without having to go all the way around and double back. But the quickest way to it was going through Kittyland. But yeah, so, and they still got the I forget what they used to call it, but now they call it Boo Blasters. The little haunted house teacup.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I don't know what that old name was, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It was definitely a different name. Now it's Boo Blaster, and it's like, what?
My favorite is whenever a company that used to have licensing rights and no longer has them, whatever they change the names to are freaking great. Boo Blaster, the Bat, and the Stunt Car. They didn't even try. I don't feel like they put a lot of work into it.
They did not even try.
No, exactly. But what's crazy to me is that made me realize I don't know if Paramount owned that park, or if they just like let them license the name, or what that deal was. Because if Paramount owned it, they'd have to sell it and then say, hey, you can't use our names anymore, which seems really petty. So it sounds like they more likely licensed it or something like that. That's crazy, though.
Well, because they used to even have the Trekkies that walked around, and now they don't have any of those. They just have Snoopy.
I don't remember the parent company for Snoopy, but seems like, I guess they were like, whatever. It's a park in the middle of Ohio. We'll make a few extra bucks of it. Yeah, you can have the name. I don't care.
Right, exactly right.
Yeah. No effort on their part.
The blue ice cream now. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
They now call it a Snoopy cone. Not sure how, not sure why.
Yeah, Snoopy was blue in that one episode or something. I don't know. That's ridiculous.
Right. The Smurf cone, maybe? I'll go with that, but no, okay, whatever.
Well, Smurf might have been. It probably was Smurf. Was it Smurfs before, and that Hanna-Barbera was part of Smurfs? I think. I don't know. I don't know why I'm pretending like I know what companies own cartoons. I don't.
Yep, me neither. But anyway.
So
yeah, ultimately it was a good summer.
That's awesome. So without getting yourself in trouble, because you obviously work at a specific dealership, I wanted to talk to you about your experience as a car salesman, because car salesmen are one of those positions that people have all these rumors and myths and lies and everything about how sleazy you guys are, how all the tricks that you can do to try to get them to lower the price, or the tricks that they try to do to get you to pay a higher price. Tell me something, your favorite myth, the thing that you hear about car salesmen that just is not true at all, at least not in your experience anyways.
My favorite myth is that you can always negotiate the internet price. We live in an internet world now, people. No, you can't. That's why it's there, because they want people that live in another state to see their best price possible. It's not negotiable. Not either. Nobody puts their most aggressive pricing out there and it still has $3,000 in markup. It just doesn't work.
So you're saying the price they put on the internet for like that internet price or whatever, that's generally speaking the best price. So would you recommend, I should say, people use that as a comparative measure for other cars on the lot or other cars of that type anyways?
Now I won't say that there's not any room of motion in that. It's just, usually at that point, you're talking hundreds, not thousands, So if you're looking at a $20,000 car and you're shopping, if you find one online and it's the cheapest one that you found online, chances are you're not going to find it for another $1,500 off whenever you show up at the dealership. We want to make money, but ultimately we want to earn your business. We're not like, yes, it used to be really, really shady. It also used to be completely unregulated. In 2009, the federal government stepped in on car sales real heavy, and things have changed a lot. I'll be honest, whenever I lived in Valdosta, I would have sworn leasing is the dumbest thing in the world. Why would you ever lease a car? Because it's the only way that you can afford a $40,000 car. So yeah, I mean, I lease, I believe in leasing, but like in a pre-owned market, like when you shop and you spend countless hours shopping for a car online, the chances that you're going to show up at a dealership and they're going to be able to take thousands more dollars off of that price are slim to none.
So do you think that the buyer and the sellers just have a different perspective of what that is? And do you think there would be any value in showing the, what's it called? The price that you paid for it, the dealer paid for it, the dealer's price. You think there'd be value in letting people know exactly how much you're marking it up? Or you think people they want you to cut too much if they're like, oh, you should only make 1% profit or something like that?
Yeah, that's exactly what comes down to it at that point, is that people want to then at that point decide what they feel your profit margins should be because they understand what the bills of running a dealership are. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Salespeople aren't cheap. People that do all the paperwork aren't cheap. It is very, very expensive to run a dealership. I'm fortunate enough to work for arguably the largest dealer in Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know that it's arguable, but sure. So, but they, I have the opportunity to travel and sell whatever I want, wherever I want to do it, within my auto group. I can take my customers wherever I want, as long as they want to go. But it's just not a thing where we can, what I paid for something doesn't matter. You know what I mean? What I paid for it doesn't diminish the value of it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you mentioned that you have a property that you own in Ohio. I just listed a house for sale. It's something that in real estate, it's very forthcoming. Anybody can look on my listing and see what I paid for my house in 2016. It was $99,000. That doesn't mean that I don't deserve to list my house for $159,900 like I did last Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
It still demands the money. You know what I mean? But in car sales, for whatever reason, whenever you run a brick and mortar store, they feel like, well, if I know what your profit margins are, I can siphon it out. Well, you can do that, but that's what typically makes car dealerships go under, is that they've been so loyal to customers for so long, and they've allowed these customers to siphon their profits. And ultimately, it's what caused the demise of a lot of dealerships. And I mean, like, if you were to drive back through Dayton, I mean, I'm sure you remember like hearing ads for Planet Ford,
yeah.
Frank Uzeski. I'm trying to think. I mean, just there's so many different dealerships that have just gone under in the Dayton area. So, and that happens because they don't hold profit, and you have to hold profit. It is crucial. It's not a dirty word. No business in this country is a nonprofit. You know, I mean, there are nonprofit companies out there, but they're not a business.
Well, so there's a couple of things you said that I wanted to talk about, because I had never really thought about it that way, but I think that's a great comparison with real estate, because it is still the value of that particular piece of property or a vehicle, depending on which case you're talking about, and it doesn't change based upon what somebody paid for it. And that's a great comparison, because like you said, you paid $99,000 or whatever for a property, and then you sell it later for $159,000. It's worth that because of the equity. It's worth that because of the growth. It's worth that because of everything else. And what you're talking about is reverse with vehicles. Vehicles have not lost a depreciable amount of equity from when they were bought. You know what I mean? And part of the reason that a dealer is able to buy it for as low as they do is because they have bulk deals and they have all those other kind of things that go into it. And the reason you get access to that is because you're doing all this constant business, which that individual seller or individual buyer is not going to do. Because I've done that on the
millions of dollars in marketing.
Mm-hmm. And I've done that on the other side of it. Well, not the other side of it. It's not related at all. With like some other not properties, small items and things that I've sold on Amazon. You know what I mean? You buy them wholesale, but you also have to buy 300, 400, 5,000, whatever it is of them to get that pricing. And then so if I'm trying to make a nickel, per thing, don't try to come and cut my legs out under me and give me, no, you need 2 cents on each one. That's ridiculous. So that's pretty right. Interesting. But I think that, I was going to say, I think that a lot of the things that people have heard about car salesmen are why they feel so vindicated in doing that to them. Do you know of any actual stories of a car salesperson doing something that's super shady? Like, let's just give you an example of something I heard from Valdosta, actually. They locked them into the room. You know what I mean? They locked them into the room and wouldn't let them come out without a deal. Like, they left them in there and locked them until they signed the contract or something like that. Now, they didn't. They didn't sign the contract.
Here's my thing with that. So, like, okay, it's kidnapping. Like, it's literally kidnapping. Like, yes, there are things within this business where there are people. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter what business it is, car sales, whatever. There are people in every avenue of life that are going to try to take advantage of a situation and a weak person. So that's wild to me. Like, I can't imagine what I would do if somebody tried to lock me into a room and tell me that I had to sign paperwork to buy something. Like, that's not how life works. Like, I imagine that was at Sunny Honda, huh?
I actually think it was. I do think that's where it was.
I'm not lying. I've worked at the same dealership for 8 years now, Brandon, and I worked at Sunny Honda for 4 hours.
Jeez.
I showed up, listened to a bunch of guys complain about their checks on payday, and I'm like, whoa, this is the day that you're supposed to remember why you have your job. I'm out. But yeah, that place was awful. If I remember correctly, whenever we got to Valdosta, they were actually blacklisted. You couldn't even do business with them in the military. But it's 9 times out of 10, while you're sitting in a dealership, if I tell a customer something, you can Google that and fact check me. So I recommend that people do that. You know, I mean, like, we're for the most part, we're a bunch of people who just aren't really, really smart, who know numbers well enough to be able to talk and are able to know cars. We're not trying to get one over on anybody. Most of us are just trying to feed our families and get as much time off as we can.
See, that's what you need to do for your new sales pitch, is bring in your family, but have them in like just Goodwill clothes that that are all patchy and like have holes and stuff in them. And just show them, like, and then whenever the buyer is trying to be too aggressive, you just turn back to your family and like, it's all right, we'll eat next week. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Right. The sad thing is, though, is that, like, since I've been doing this, and I mean, like, I remember going with other people in the office. I'm not going to drop any names, but I remember going with other females in your office and going car shopping with them and, like, trying to help. And I remember blowing deals for them. Like, literally just, like, telling the guy, like, well, if you're not going to come down and whatever, we'll walk, whatever, like, it's mine. You know what I mean? Like, it was my, like, it didn't matter to me. because I have no skin in the game at all. I'm not getting a car. I'm not getting anything. I'm just going in and I'm just trying to show how big and bad at negotiating I am. But ultimately, I'm not doing any service for the person that I went in there with. Looking back on it now, I'm like, oh man, I really sucked as a friend. I helped none. All I did was blue deals for these people. But, and it's everybody's got that person that thinks they know everything about it. And, I get people all the time, well, I sold cars for 6 months back in 1980. Well, like, I mean, if you were good at it or you cared enough, you would have done it for longer than 6 months. Like, I think that car salespeople get a bad rap because of what happened in the 80s and 90s, whenever you couldn't really prove that they were wrong. There's just too many avenues now to fact check things, to cover ourselves and make sure that we are making informed, good decisions financially. So
well, I think there's a period of time when car salesmen, again, whether they behave that way or not, I honestly wouldn't know. I wasn't old enough to buy a car at the time, but they were viewed as like Wall Street brokers, how Wall Street brokers are viewed for just lying to sell you whatever they need to. And they thought of car salespeople the same way. And again, I'm not saying that no car salespeople earn that reputation, but I am saying that I don't think that that's the average car salesperson you're going to see, because again, like you said, right now, I can look up on my phone and within 5 seconds and tell you the price of a general, whatever vehicle, as long as I'm not buying like a Bugatti or whatever else, I can tell you what price a car is going to cost. And I know that they know I have that same information. So let's not kid each other. They know what I'm coming in with. They know what they can actually do. And they try to convince me that to buy it from their dealership based upon either the relationship, based upon some of the other perks they have or whatever else, or they'll try to beat it on price. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If you come in and you sit down at my desk and we can talk about something, we can talk facts, and you can show me why you think that you should be able to pay this amount for the car, I'll go to bat for people against my management team with proof and facts all day long. But like yesterday, for instance, I had a guy that comes in, and this guy's, I mean, he's got his stuff together. I mean, he makes $170,000 a year. He's a director of operations for one of the larger health networks in Dayton. He's actually over Miami Valley. So he, he comes in and he's like, all right, well, I'm prepared to offer you $29,000. Well, my internet price is $29,999. Like I said, I might be able to talk hundreds. I don't got $1,000 in markup on this car. Not doing it. Can't do it. So I just kind of ignore him. Like, I'm not even hearing it. Let's do the appraisal on your car. Let's figure out where we're at. Also found out he wanted $15,000 for his trade whenever Kelly Blue Book's telling me it's worth $11,700. I show him this. I show him what, Carfax says my car is worth. Like, dude, if you've got anything that's better than what I'm showing you, I'll take it to him. But this is what he's going to combat me with. And ultimately, whenever I came back out, the guy realized his numbers were wrong. And again, like I just said, I just proved to this guy that I had shown $11,700 for his trade-in on his car, but I still gave him $14,000 for it. I could have offered the guy $12,000 and justified it, but we felt that we could sell the car for more and that we felt that it was better in our market, so we gave him $14,000, simply because we were being fair.
See, and that works out though, because what you're talking about, again, we talked about the relationship of car salesmen to their clientele, and that lets him know, hopefully, if he's smart enough to realize this, in future deals, that he needs to come back to this place to do business, because they'll be fair and they're not going to try to just take him any which way they can. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's the number one thing in car sales. Like, I don't want you thinking that I lied to you. I don't want you mad at me. And ultimately, if you are that before you buy the car, please don't buy the car, because I'd rather have a referral than a car deal. I would. If you're in that bad of a mood, I mean, like a lot of people think that if they come in and they complain about a sales rep, it's going to give them a better deal. And ultimately, whenever you go in and complain about a sales rep, no, you're going to get a better deal on the car. Ownership's not going to refund you money, but they will fire the sales rep. So really, all you're complaining is doing in an attempt to get a better deal is losing somebody's livelihood. For what? $500? Because you felt like you should have gotten it cheaper? Makes no sense. A little bit of compassion goes a long way.
Yeah. See, now you're asking for compassion for car salespeople, and that's that's a big ask. That's hard. You guys are all soulless zombies, right?
I asked for it all the way around, man. All the way around. Equal opportunity compassion.
So how has selling cars during a pandemic been for you? Like, I know you said you obviously got shut down there for a while. I don't know if you're back or not, but have you changed your practices? Are you guys doing more like drop offs and stuff like that, or what?
No. I mean, like, it's been record breaking. Truthfully, wow. Our stores have been outperforming previous years. I mean, we've been doing very well. Problem though is that we're running out of inventory, which is terrible. But for me personally, all right, now we'll get into it. So I have been very big into coronavirus as far as just staying away from anything that can do it, following state guidelines to a T as much as I can, and not as much as I can, to a T. I don't hang out in large groups. I just don't do that stuff. I wear a mask 100% of the time at work. And I'm just not too enthusiastic about getting out there and meeting new people that I don't know where they've been. So I do spend a lot of time, navigating that. And, I'm just not too aggressive right now in getting out there and doing it. It's just not. But other people have been doing great.
See, that's crazy to me. The inventory part makes sense. I get that. A lot of factories have had a lot of problems around the world getting different pieces of raw materials and all that type of stuff they need. But where the hell are these people going? Where are you buying a car for? You can't go anywhere. Like I don't get that. Like that makes no sense.
I mean, like, I'll be honest. I have a theory about it, and my theory is that it's.
Do we need a tinfoil hat this? Or?
Possibly, yeah. Actually, I think that there's a huge correspondence with elections and car sales. I always do. It is actually starting to die out this month. So this will be my third election year, or third presidential election in car sales. And every year about this time, I mean, it is busy. And I really just believe that people go out, they spend their money, and then they start to tool it back a little bit and see, all right, let's see what this administration does after the election. But leading up to it, they have a pretty good idea of where we're at, and they just start attacking it and spending money. I also feel like people have more money right now. Some people, you have the two extremes. I feel like, people took huge dips, and then other people took huge climbs. And those huge climbs are what's ultimately paying off for cars right now. GM plants were shut down for 3.5 months, so no new cars. I mean, that's gonna hurt GM big time, but they got it. I mean, the CEO made like over $21 million last year, so she'll be fine. But I don't know. It is wild. It's real wild.
What you said there actually doesn't need tinfoil. It has been proven by financial experts for the stock market, so I can't see why any other equity in America wouldn't be similar or see some type of similar effect. So that's pretty interesting. I would have never thought about that either, that you could that car sales are that cyclical based upon presidential elections. That's very interesting. So if I come on your lot right now, what are you trying to sell me? Unlimited budget. Let's go there, because I know you're going to start saying, what do you need? What do you want? All that stuff. I know you're a good car salesperson, but what do you want to sell me?
That is truthful. I don't. I want to sell you what's going to fit your needs, truthfully. Like, as silly as it is, the salesman that wants to sell you something, the salesman that gives you a different answer than what I'm giving you is the guy that everybody's told you about for years.
Right, but you've known me for 10 plus years now. You should know. You got to. We haven't talked in a long time, like this, anyways. So what does Brandon want? What is the Brandon that you last knew? What would he want on the lot? And I want to see how much it's still accurate for me.
I just took in an Audi SUV that's very clean, actually, yesterday. that's probably what I would steer you towards. That's probably the first thing that I'd bring up, and then start feeling you out from there, seeing what you like, don't like, all that good stuff about that particular car.
And that's exactly why you're a good car salesman. That is exactly what I've been looking at if I do decide to get another car. It's going to be an Audi SUV, probably either the Q3 or the Q5.
It was a Q5. It's a 15 with 100,000 miles on it, and yeah, that's the direction that I would look. I think the last car that you had whenever I left Valdosta was a Beamer that you just bought.
No, I bought the Beamer when I got to Tampa. Dude, all the cars I had in Valdosta are from my dark day of I didn't own a good car in Valdosta, not a single one.
No.
I had the Pontiac Parisian. There was a family hand-me-down. There was a big boat that ended up throwing a rod when it ran out of oil because the oil light was always on, so I never knew when it actually needed oil, and I'm lazy. I didn't check it regularly. I had the Chrysler Sebring that the door handle fell off. It stopped shifting out of first gear, and then when I was driving it once, the tire fell off. So that was fun. Man, what else did I have? I had some other ones down there, but never a good car. I had nothing but pieces of crap the entire time that I was in Valdosta for sure. So I'll be happy to tell you that I have graduated from piece of crap cars. The car that I have now is the first new car that I've ever bought, and I've had it for, I think, going on 4 years now. So I'm pretty happy with it and everything. But yeah, no more crap cars for me. GTI, Volkswagen GTI, 2017.
Oh yeah, it's a good car.
Yeah, I love that car, man. But to be honest with you, so I moved to Miami last year, and where I live now, man, I don't really need to drive. So there's like a point in time when I actually thought getting rid of it just to save some money while we're down here because we're going to be here for a couple of years. And I thought about getting rid of it just because I never need to drive it. And then the pandemic happened, and I certainly haven't driven it this year.
Right. Yeah. I was doing about 7,000 miles a year.
Jeez, dude. How is that possible?
I live 2 miles from work.
That'll do it.
I can almost walk, and and I lease, but now I'm also going to be moving to Beaver Creek.
Oh, now coming on up.
And still working in Miamisburg. So, yeah, I'm gonna double that.
If you double that, that'll still put you, I think, below the national. Well, not this year, but most years national average, right? Isn't the national average about 15?
Yeah, some people will still try to argue that it's 12, but I think they're wrong.
From what I've heard from insurance companies, I think they market it as 15 because anytime I tell them I got 15 in like 1 year of all the years I've driven. And so they always give me a low mileage discount for a lot of the insurance packages I get because I don't drive that much.
Right.
So, but I was this year, So when I moved to Miami, I was still working, supporting an office out of St. Petersburg. So I did have to drive back to Tampa or fly, depending on what airline prices were like right then. But go back to Tampa once a month. So my mileage did go up a little bit when I first moved down here. But after that, like I said, because I wasn't driving around day to day, it actually kind of evened out a little bit. But I don't know, man. I'm terrified of what it looks like driving in Miami after the pandemic, because people in Miami already are super bad drivers a lot of the time. So now that they haven't driven in a few months, it's going to be a lot of accidents out there.
Me learned to drive in Ohio, so can't be that bad.
Dude, so here's what I'll say. I've driven in New York City. I've driven in Qatar. And I obviously, like I said, I learned to drive in Ohio and everything like that. But Miami is the weirdest thing because you have so many people from so many different places. But then also the things they do are just dumb. They know what they're doing is bad. They know what they're doing is wrong. But like you're talking about turning left from like the second or third lane. You know what I mean? Not the lane that's up against the left lane or whatever. They're second or third over, and they just try to turn left so you almost T-bone them. That happens at least once every time I'm out of the house driving.
Wow. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, it's like I said.
We have this weird thing now.
Go ahead.
We have this weird thing now in the Dayton area. I call it the Miamisburg Turn, where no matter if you're turning left into 2 lanes of traffic, they always make that left turn into the furthest lane from them. That's not how you drive. Closest lane every time, and it doesn't matter which way they're turning. They can be a left or right turn. It's always the furthest lane that they can turn into. And I'm like, that's how accidents happen.
Yeah. I have no experience with other countries to say that we do it better or worse. But I do feel like what America does do for how they teach people to drive and like the actual test and everything is not good. You know what I mean? Like I learned to drive when I was 18, so I got my license a little bit later than a lot of other people. And they teach you like things that
because we didn't have to do driver's ed, right?
No, I didn't. No, so I didn't have to do driver's ed or anything.
Same with me.
Yeah,
did it at 18 because it saved me the money of not having to do driver's ed.
So, but that's the crazy part is that what they test you on in the actual test is not where most people get in accidents. I know very few people who get in accidents while parallel parking. Like, do I know people who hit shit? Absolutely. But nobody's getting in an accident that's actually threatening their life or significant property damage when they're parallel parking. But at least in Ohio, you have to parallel park for the test, you know? And then you just do some general driving.
Oh, even in Georgia, you have to do that. But I don't know if you remember, but my ex-wife rolled the cone over during her driving test. And they were like, yeah, you're good. What?
Because I don't remember parallel parking hardly anywhere in Georgia. In Georgia, you're mostly parking on dirt and grass and stuff like that. You don't really parallel park hardly ever.
Right. Even whenever you pull up to a friend's house, like, where am I supposed to park? Just find a spot in the yard. It's clay anyway.
Yeah. Oh man, I parked in so many yards. I would say I'd be willing to bet that I parked in more yards while living in Georgia than I did driveways, for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Did Josh even have a driveway? I think he just had a carport, didn't he? And then like we ended up making like a trail. But
when he bought the house, he definitely didn't have a driveway. He had like he had what people like the footpath because it just had it was never made into a driveway. It was grass that just had died because you kept driving over it. It wasn't actually a driveway or anything like that.
Yeah.
He only had it when he lived in that one weird like little apartment or whatever right across the street from the base. I don't know if that might have been before you guys got there.
It was before our time. Yeah, he always lived over on Cat Creek.
Yeah. The place on Cat Creek, he did not have a driveway or anything like that, and you would just park basically anywhere in the grass, which was terrifying because there was like random divots, and so depending on if you didn't follow the same path every time, and if somebody was already parked there, like Manny or somebody, then you're gonna try to go around and you'd hit a divot and worry that your tire was gonna fall off. Well, I did because my cars were pieces of crap, but whatever.
Right. I remember it being terrifying pulling in there on a motorcycle.
So did you ride a bike when you were down there?
Oh yeah.
Remember
right around the same time that Josh started getting into riding, I bought one. And yeah, every time I pulled in his driveway, I'm like, I might as well just stand up because otherwise I'm gonna eat it. But
see, those were fun times.
You still talk to him at all?
Say what?
Have you talked to him in 10 years?
No, man. Josh, so I'm trying to remember the last time I talked to him. It's been almost 10 years probably because he wasn't a social media person. He never really got on social media. And then so I one time or another got like a random email from him and then I'd respond, but he would never respond again. Like he was teaching at Denfo's there for a while up in Maryland.
Yeah. I actually know a guy. It's funny. One of my really good friends, one of my best friends in high school, her little brother ended up deciding that he was going to join the military, and he is now a photographer. He's done the Syracuse program and all that. But when he was going through Denfos, he did know a Sergeant Jasper.
Mm-hmm.
And we're unable to confirm whether or not it's the same one. But
it's him. It
seems like it was.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I knew he was there because that's where he went to from Moody. But yeah, man, that guy just fell off, and he's such a good dude, man. I love Josh. I'd love to find him.
Yeah, he was good people, man. Yeah, like I said, I don't know. I heard a rumor he got married. He was dating like a nurse or something up there, and they got married. But that's it. I haven't talked to him. I haven't talked to Manny in a while either. I tried to reach out to Manny every once in a while, but haven't really talked to him either.
You know, Manny actually photographed my current marriage.
Did he? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So he was living in Vegas, and I got married in Vegas, and it was all planned. It wasn't like an eloping thing, but like my oldest brother, Sean, was stationed in Nellis,
mm-hmm.
and me and my wife and my in-laws and all her family were going to be going out there anyway. And after I proposed, my father-in-law was like, do it out there. And I'm like, yeah, we could probably do that. So that's what we did. And then I was like, Manny's out there. So I called him, and Manny, yeah, dude, he showed up. He took pictures of mine and my brother's wedding.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it was really awesome that he did, because the wedding pictures that I got from the chapel were awful.
Yeah.
Like, they were the worst. And I'm like, you mean to tell me that I had to make my photographer sit there during the entire ceremony and not take better quality pictures than what you guys are giving me? Mm-hmm. But ended up giving us the entire package because they were bad.
Yeah, Manny's a really good photographer too, man. So you got some, I'm assuming, some pretty great work there on the cheap, which is because he's worldwide known for his photos when he was with the Thunderbirds and all that stuff too, man. He's legit.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, dude, he's phenomenal. Yeah. And just such a fantastic person too.
Yeah. He's so affable, man. I love Manny. Manny was always a good dude. Manny was back, and this was back before like this became a thing with guys. Guys didn't used to do this. Manny would just call me just to talk. Like most of the time when guys would call you, they wanted something. Like, hey, let's go do this. I need this. Can you answer this or whatever it was? Manny would just call me, and I'm like, hey, what's going on, man? He's like, nothing. What you up to? And that'd be the whole conversation. He was just checking on me to see what was going on. That was it. Which again, like now having grown a little bit emotionally matured and everything.
Like a girl with manly features.
What'd you say?
He just likes to let you know that he likes women with manly features.
Oh. He's never going to live that down. I don't know what he was going for with that one. That was, yeah. He got his words a little twisted, I think, with that one. But you may notice that it starts to jump around a little bit here. That's because Tim and I discussed a situation that we are both familiar with, but we did not get the permission from the person involved to share their story. So I edited everything together because overall, the conversation is very informational about how the military treats women who have been treated improperly by other military members, particularly those in their own squadron, and how it does not take proper precautions to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
It's one of like my poster children for women need to be better taken care of in the military.
Fair. That's very accurate, yeah.
She is, dude. She's my example every single time, and it sucks. And it's terrible what happened to her and the way they handled that, and the way that the military handled that whole situation in the dorms was bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think it's, that was our insight to what all these women today are talking about within the military and the way that they were treated. And we saw it, plain and simple. I mean, that guy got nothing.
Yeah.
For violating her.
Yeah. So to be clear, I'll have to maybe go back and edit this out because I haven't talked type of stuff, but just it wasn't actual sexual assault or anything like that. But it was heinous, and you're right. It was indicative of the way that the military handled those situations, and that is the exact problem that the military has talked about for quite some time. And that's what I've tried to point out to other individuals. Like I just had a conversation on Facebook recently when somebody posted about punishing women who lie about claiming sexual assault. And so I started, that conversation. I'm like, well, how do you say that they're lying? And if you're talking about the Brian Banks situation, all right, you got her on tape and she's admitting that she was lying about it and everything like that. Yeah, absolutely. But you don't have to create a new law for that. That's giving false statement, that's obstruction of justice. That's all these different things. And then he can sue in civil court and everything else, right? But knowing what I know about how low those reporting is for sexual assault and sexual harassment, those type of things, and then how low the conviction rate is, and you're talking about punishing the women who lie about it, like that's such a minuscule percentage. All you're going to do is further hurt the people who are actually assaulted. It doesn't make sense.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
But
I think it is, as a father of nothing but women, it also heightens my awareness towards those situations and makes it easier to empathize and sympathize. But yeah, it was absolutely ridiculous the way that was handled.
Yeah.
Even within, like, I don't know, even within the rank of her family, like her family had rank and still treated that way. Just proof it's not even about who you know. It's literally, this is our system, and if you don't like it, move on.
Yeah. The system needs a lot of work for sure, and I'm not exactly sure how we're going to get there. But the scariest part, I think, is the military has its flaws, and it certainly handles certain situations worse, but it also has a lot of work that it's done that the civilian sector hasn't done, which is nuts. You know what I mean? It can go both ways depending on which unit you're part of, and that's the problem with the military. It's very much unit dependent, but they've at least tried to put a lot of things in place with the SARC program, with the SARC victim advocates and all that type of stuff. Sorry, Sexual Assault Response Coordinator, aka SARC, for those who don't know. SARC victim advocates and the SARC program in general that has helped a lot, but it's still got to get a lot better. They had a movie that I think, oh man, it came out probably a while ago now, The Invisible War, I think it was called. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's talking about women who were sexually assaulted in the military and how that whole thing was handled and how it basically ruined their careers. And for a lot of them gave them PTSD and everything else and ruined a lot of their lives and stuff. And the military did nobody any favors in that.
Absolutely.
So,
nope.
But
just went on about their business. It wasn't their children.
Exactly. But just staying back on the other positive topic, though, it's just weird. Like I said, the people that you just meet on happenstance because we're all stationed together and stuff like that, and you see them all kind of going off and doing all these different things. It's just one of my favorite experiences about the military is things like that, like the things like you and I now coming back together after having seen each other in person in like 10 years and still able to connect and, you know, have good conversations and everything.
Absolutely. And real conversations, not just conversations about nothing.
Everything is about nothing, right? But
it is and it isn't.
So in that same vein, though, getting into some good real conversations too, I've obviously seen the stuff you've been talking about on Facebook and the things you've been going into. How has that been as a father to kind of go through 2020 and a lot of the misinformation and then just everything that's been going on? How do you talk to your girls about that?
Well, obviously Lily's 13, and she's a young adult. I mean, she sees it. When I found out that my 13-year-old daughter watched a video of George Floyd being suffocated in the streets, I cried for probably an hour. We have a wide place for our kids right now, and we gotta figure it out, man. We gotta figure out what side of history we want to be on, where we want our children's opinion of us to be. I mean, like, so I don't know, you know, Lily lives in Montana now. The younger ones, they don't know what's going on, so there's not a conversation with them. It's just you know, how many 4-year-olds did you know before coronavirus that knew a 4-syllable word? You know what I mean? But now they all do. I mean, there's not a kid on the planet that doesn't know what coronavirus is, and you know it's sad, but at the same time, it's necessity. But I think that the biggest thing, you know, with coronavirus, it's easy. You know what I mean? There's a virus that's out there. We're not sure how dangerous it is, but we're being told that there's these guidelines, and this is the way we're going to do it. It's simple. But then you throw on top of it now, you know, the police brutality and, you know, racial injustice and all of that stuff. Throwing that on top of it, you know, it makes for a conversation now, you know, and it's one that Lily is very much so tuned in on, to the point where she thinks that she has already decided that she is going to be moving to Canada when she turns 18 because she hates this country, which, you know, sucks for a dad, you know, because I obviously see our country a little bit differently than that. Obviously, I love America, you know. I think that there's a lot of room for improvement here. It's all about making sure that we dive into issues and not politics. Because I do think that they are different. You know, I was listening to Joe Rogan on the way up to my in-laws today, and you know, they were talking about how media, politics, they all, you know, are really good at isolating one issue and building up, like, you know, an entire tribe of people to jump on this. And in turn, it's, you know, now it's, you know, these people that, yeah, they believe in one thing. You know, it's kind of like, you know, me and you, we're Buckeyes fans, right? But ultimately, whenever we translate that over to NFL now, we might not see eye to eye. Probably don't see eye to eye. I'm a Panthers fan, so, but ultimately, like within that realm, like, you know, people will get on that one topic and be like, okay, yep, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, and it's like, but are you? Do you know? so, so I think that that's like the biggest thing with the kids is like trying to just make sure that we don't. I hate the terminology. I hate the like, yes, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat because I'm not. Like I'm neither one of those things. I think that those are. I think there's a lot of both of those parties that I take from. You know, I like my guns. I like people too. so, I think they're different.
So if you're willing to talk about it, I'd be glad to know more about what it is that Lily is seeing that kind of made her feel like that America is the problem and that somehow Canada would be better. And again, I'm not going to hold it against her. She's 13, and so she's going through a lot right now and everything. So
she does live in a very, very liberal household. Mm-hmm. Very much so. I mean, very, very liberal household. So they very much so hate Donald Trump. You know, blindly hate him. It doesn't matter what he does, I hate it. And they've bred that to her. I mean, she hates Donald Trump. Anything that Donald Trump does, it's so terrible. She's very unaccepting of anybody that disagrees with her, which is another, you know, thing that we've kind of worked on. Is like, it's okay for people to not agree with you. It's all right. It's kind of what makes things work. But what has gotten her there is truly this presidential administration. I feel that. Now, what within that? I mean, we'd have to bring her on the call, you know, but because I don't, you know, I mean, obviously I don't share the same ideology. I think that there's incredible things that Donald Trump has done for this country, and I think there's some really big hiccups where he's really messed up. Kind of comes with the territory of the job, you know. They're gonna, if the moment that you're 100% happy with a president, I really feel like that's when they're just a really good liar. You
know? And I agree. That's one of the things that I think that we've lost a lot of, and I think there's a lot of things that go into that, but is the objectivity of, has President Trump done positive things? Yes, he absolutely has. If you want if you want a specific example of that, the justice reform things that he has done, commuting the sentences of some of the people who people have been fighting for a long time, that's a huge one. Again, in the language of politics, yes, that may have been played a certain basis or whatever else. I don't really care, because at the end of the day, that person's now free, and that's really ultimately what matters. But at the same time, I fear for what you're talking about before, and I've talked about this recently, is tribalism. That people, because they say you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're this, you're that, and to go even a step down from that, you're pro-Trump or you're anti-Trump, right? That is something that people are using to just not have conversations anymore, and I think that doesn't get us anywhere. Because even at the end of the day, you have to look at, like, say, something like the civil rights movement. They were sitting there looking at people who were saying they basically weren't human, you're not allowed to vote and everything, and they were able to still have conversations, had to still have conversations. Now we've gotten to a point where people will say, hey, you like a president that I don't like, we can't have a conversation about that. Yeah, that's not where we need to go. Nobody's getting better by doing that. Even if you're right, let's say that President Trump bit the head off a child on stage. Let's say he just did something heinous, right? Completely ridiculous. And I'm not saying he did that. I'm not saying he didn't. But I'm just saying, like, say he did something so insane. Going that way is still not going to get us any better by you shutting down and saying, I can't talk to you about that if you support that behavior. Now, again, I agree that we have some serious questions if you're supporting biting the heads off children, but you still have to have that conversation with that person, because if you're not, then what are you going to do? Alienate them and they're somehow going to get better? No, that population still exists in America, and you have to deal with it. Now, that kind of mentality, kind of emotion, maybe where Lily got the I just don't want to deal with any of it, but hopefully it'll be better than Canada, you know, get her at least somewhere like Bali or something, you know what I mean?
Well, she's got a huge issue with immigration reform in this country, and she thinks everybody should just be allowed. And she's young, she doesn't understand that the downfall to that. The worries that we do need to have within this complete, open, unfiltered immigration. Like that's not, and so I kind of put that back on her whenever she said, "Well, I'm just going to move to Canada." You realize that you have to have a really good plan before you do so. But Canada won't let you in.
Yeah, Canada has a lot stricter guidelines for that stuff than America does, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. The only difference is that you don't have the ability to contradict them and yell and complain about it. This is the way it is. You don't like it? Leave. And I don't know, and that's I guess that's a pretty ignorant comparison because I really know that's how it works in Canada. But I don't imagine that it's like, I imagine that things go decent up there. People don't, you don't hear the complaining in Canada. So.
Well, I'll say this about Canada specifically, but every place has its problems. Every place has its issues. And if you're worried about immigration reform, Canada's probably not the place that's going to be the utopia or the bastion in the clouds you hope it would be.
Right.
So
yeah, not even close. Close at all.
But the good news is when you're talking about immigration reform and her learning about a lot of those the things that go on with that, living in Montana, she'll definitely learn. Montana definitely has some opinions about the matter, and she'll get some information on that subject for sure. So it's interesting to me that she's actually right now, just in this very moment or whatever, she's on the other side of that in a state that is very much not that.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, and wildly enough, like she's never really lived in a real Democratic state except Virginia, and she's only there for like a year and a half. So it is kind of weird that she has gravitated that way because, I mean, she lives in a very, very Republican, gated community on the golf course in New Bern, North Carolina, like uber Republican. So yeah, it is kind of weird that she's going that route, especially since like I tend to sway more to the right on a lot of topics. But again, that's another thing that I was listening to today. It's like, just because I don't support abortion doesn't mean that I'm a Republican. It just means that I don't support abortion. Like,
well, just going back into what I do know about you, and like I was saying before about the tribalism of saying Republican, Democrat, and all that type of stuff. I've seen the social justice stuff that you've been posting about racial relations and police brutality and those type of things as well. And if somebody was just to peg you as right, then they'd shut you off completely. They don't see that. They don't see that that entire picture of who Tim is and what your beliefs are, because realistically, nobody should align. So go ahead.
It's so funny because like within that, because I'll be honest, I imagine that if you go back 5 years on my Facebook page, you will see exact opposite posts from what I post today. I didn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. You know what I mean? But it comes a time where like we get hit in the face so many times with the same thing, the same image, to where you finally like start looking at it and you're like, man, like what the hell is going on? I guess there's got to be something that can change this.
But I think what you're saying there is the thing that I hope for a lot of people, but you don't see it. You don't see the other side. And that's the willingness to change your opinion when you get more information or get different information. Let's not say more, but not everybody's willing to do that. They hold it as some badge of pride or whatever that they don't change their opinion.
You feel like you're giving up a part of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it doesn't mean that you were wrong. It just means that you've now been provided with more evidence. It's kind of like whenever a jury is able to be swayed from a, when they're not, I don't know if this guy's guilty, but then, then the gloves fit, like,
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I definitely did that, So it's like, I think that it's very important for these kind of conversations to happen, because otherwise the big problem is that too many people are trying to have this conversation on Facebook. People just type whatever they want to say and act like it's not real words. Mm-hmm. Just because you type it and say it to somebody doesn't mean that it's not real, doesn't mean that it doesn't permeate with them. And, you see families fighting on Facebook over this stuff, and it's like, why? Like, why don't you, but yet you won't sit down around the dinner table and have this conversation, but you'll fight about it out here for everybody else to see you fighting with your brother or your sister or whatever, you know, and it's like, you guys could literally sit around your dinner table and probably realize that you actually agree more than you disagree.
Well, I think the previous generations did it. Our generation and the generations maybe after us will get better, but they did our generation a great disservice by saying you can't talk about religion, politics, money, and race. Sorry, I forgot the race one for a second there. You can't talk about those things. And so because they told us so long we couldn't talk about those things, we got terrible at talking about them. And so now all we do is just scream political taglines at each other and memes and everything else instead of just sitting down like, dude, let's talk about this for a second. You know, and like you said, Facebook's a terrible way to do so.
Yeah, let's not talk about you know, the politics. Let's not talk about this. Let's just talk about your feelings, because 9 times out of 10 morally we all align, I believe, to the most part. You know, I mean, and there are those people out there that are you know, giving us the blatantly obvious racism that they're, you know, putting out there, which is, you know, which is nice. Like, no need to have a conversation with that person. Move on. I'm not gonna fight with some guy who is some white hillbilly that's got a Confederate flag and uses the N-word every other word in a conversation, talking to me on Facebook. I'm good with talking to that person. He adds no value to my life or anybody else's, so why deal with that person? Just move on. Have a conversation with somebody that actually might be different than yours, but at the same time be able to come back and understand that your morals still align.
Well, I think what you're saying is exactly kind of what we touched on when we were talking about Lily a little bit ago, is that you have to be able to have disagreements and still have a conversation. Disagreement cannot shut down the conversation if you hope to get anywhere meaningful. Because if only time we can talk is when we agree, that's how we create those echo chambers. That's how we don't learn. We just create the people who think like us, and then we see what we know and everything, and it doesn't get anywhere better. And that's exactly how we got to where we are now, for the most part, is now Facebook. What Facebook has allowed us to do, not Facebook directly, I apologize, shouldn't just keep crapping on them, but social media in general and the internet in general has allowed us to do is create these echo chambers where I'm only seeing information from information sources that agree with my point of view on life. I'm only seeing information from people who agree with my point of view on life. And then if anybody else is going the other way, I just shut it out. And people don't see, they slowly over time lose that ability to hear something they don't agree with and react rationally instead of go, oh, this person's dead to me.
Right. Yeah. Daryl Green is a very good example of it. I think that's his name, at least.
The guy with the KKK?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. He's incredible.
Yeah. How awesome is that? I mean, you are a guy who's literally taken people who are members of the KKK.
So let's be clear. Hold on, before you go though. It sounds like right now we're praising a dude in the KKK. That's not what's happening here. I want to give us a little bit of additional detail. It's a black gentleman who meets with members of the KKK and through friendship basically convinces them to leave. He's convinced, I think, somewhere around 200 or so people to leave the KKK, and like he gets their robe, he takes their robes, he takes their memorabilia and all that type of stuff as well. So we're not praising the KKK. No, not take it. Like, yeah, they give it to him. Yeah, you're right.
These people ultimately give it to him as like a bad apology, because he'll buy these people a beer at a comedy show and sit there and talk to them, and then find out that they are like big members of the KKK. Like, these people have been members of the KKK for 20 years. Like, well, I'm not supposed to be having a beer with you. Well, what do you mean? And then they pull out their KKK membership card and show it to them. And the next thing you know, it's like, yeah, just those are often the best friendships, are the ones that you didn't see coming. The guy that you look at and you're like, yeah, we're probably not going to be friends. When you become friends with that guy, it's usually the best friendships, right? So it's like, I don't know. I think that we're all too quick to shut. And I don't know. I can't say we all. People nowadays are too quick to shut down other people just based off of a first impression or whatever, and I don't know. It doesn't have to be that way.
Well, and I'm hopeful that the painful year that 2020 has been for a lot of people has gotten us to that place where we're willing to do that more often. I've seen a lot more efforts to do so, and I don't even mean specifically to any one particular issue. Obviously race and coronavirus, public health in general has been a huge one this year, have been huge two issues this year, but just anything. Once you develop that muscle to talk to people about controversial things, you can talk to them about anything controversial. And so I'm hopeful that the pain that we've gone through this year and a lot of the ways it's come out that allows us to get better at that. But what I do fear is politicians have become so good at politicizing issues that we continue to let the tribe that we align to stop us from having those meaningful conversations, as well as the people don't know how to do it anymore. Not, I shouldn't say don't know where to do it. Because like you said, Facebook is not a great way to communicate, and that's how we communicate mostly. Twitter's not any better. Twitter is worse, obviously. And Instagram's not even made for it. So if they don't know how to do it and they're not finding those outlets to do it, again, you're not developing those muscles and we're not getting better at it. And right now, lo and behold, we're also in the midst of a disease where we can't be in 6 feet of each other. You know what I mean? So it's just a lot of conflicts right now to how we can get better at actually having conversations.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's just, and it's refreshing. I mean, it really is. I went and sat in a park. I don't know if you remember the guy that I used to play paintball with, that dated Gina for like a minute. DJ.
Vaguely, very, very, very vaguely.
But anyway, he's actually a cop here now, and he actually had hit me up on the 4th of July because obviously I was posting a lot of things, Black Lives Matter associated and whatnot. And finally he came at me personally and was like, Tim, listen, man, I know you don't know this, but I am a cop. And he'd been fighting with me on Facebook about it a lot and whatever. And finally I was just like, yo, look, dude, we got to get up. We got to get together then. Cause we're having this fight on Facebook all the time. And that's not what it is. I mean, I was the best man in this guy's wedding. I care about this guy, and he's a cop in Clark County, which, in my opinion, is the worst police department in the world. And it is, another example of cops needing reform. Another buddy of mine was out one night taking pictures. His family owned the New Carlisle Times, and he was shot by a Clark County Sheriff's deputy unloading a tripod out of the car. No announcement, no put that down, no nothing for my friend, who was a white guy, in rural Midwest, out in the middle of a thunderstorm, 11 o'clock at night, when a cop on a traffic stop sees him and literally does not skip a beat, shoots him twice. He knows the guy. The cop knows my buddy. The cop was suspended previously for using anabolic steroids, was not supposed to be back on the force by himself that night because he was still under restrictions based on his suspensions. He wasn't supposed to be carrying a firearm while in uniform during the suspension. And the firearm that he shot my buddy with, he'd never qualified for in the police department at all. But 2 weeks after the shooting, he's at the county fair patrolling with children around. This guy's rogue. He's a liability to our entire community. And yet you're allowing him to be a cop. So it drove me to that, and it brought me to that. But anyway, me and Daniel got together last week in a park, and we sat there for 3 hours. Didn't realize it was 3 hours, but finally we realized, oh crap, we got to go get our kids. It's 5 o'clock now, so we sat there and we talked, and he's a cop, and he doesn't believe in BLM. He doesn't believe in their message. He believes in their movement, but he doesn't believe in the ultimate message. He believes cops need reform. He believes that cops need more training. And I think it takes a lot for a cop to admit that. But I think that if we talk one-on-one with these cops, I think that most of them would agree that when presented with these issues, they have the right training to navigate through it. He's like, well, cops are trained to continue pulling the trigger until the threat is neutralized. Well, if they didn't take the time to assess the threat in the first place, how can they know if it's neutralized? So to which I brought up Tamir Rice. The kid is playing in a park. He's a child. If you as a cop are not trained well enough to assess that situation and have a communication with this person before putting bullets in them, you have no business being a cop. It's a 12-year-old boy playing with a toy. And if that's a crime, then we need to go after the manufacturers of that toy.
Yeah, the Tamir Rice one, and maybe it's because it's Ohio, but I don't think so. I think it's the details of the matter, is always the one I go back to when we're talking about these situations. Don't get me wrong, there's been tons of them. I'm not trying to make the other one seem less heinous, but Tamir Rice, again, like you said, 12-year-old child in a park, in an open carry state. So even if it is a real gun, he's committing a misdemeanor, I believe, because he's under the age. But it's an open carry state. You pull up within like 5-10 feet of him. I don't remember what the car. I don't know the distance. And he hops out and shoots it within 2 seconds of being on the scene. And that cop had also previously
been community rec center.
Yeah. And that cop had also previously been denied graduating, I think, from the academy or his badge or something to that effect for failing a psychological evaluation. And the person who wrote it said he should never be a police officer. He doesn't have the mental capacity to do so because of.
Still is.
Huh?
And he still is.
Not in Cleveland, but yes, I believe that's what I heard as well, that he went and got another job. And that's part of the problem, is there isn't a proper tracking system for those police officers when they can just move between departments, and unless somebody, a reporter or somebody catches them.
Breonna Taylor now lives in Cincinnati.
See? Exactly. It happens.
They'll be on the Cincinnati Police Department before too long. Yes. They just move on.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing ever happened.
And so let me ask you your opinion on that, because neither of us are political scientists. Neither of us have backgrounds in this arena, mind you, but we have opinions, of course. What is your opinion? What is one of the steps we need to take to start police reform, and how do we get better at it?
I think first and foremost, we have to establish an age at which a person is an adult. Okay, because a person can get a driver's license at 16. A person can be tried as an adult at 16 or 17, I think it is, in the state of Ohio, unless extenuating circumstances apply. But yet they can't buy a pack of cigarettes until they're 21. They can't buy alcohol until they're 21. They can join the military at 18. You can carry a gun as a cop before you can as a civilian. In age, it's a problem. We have to establish an age for adults, because there's far too many. At least in this state, I don't know what it's like in Florida. I know that you can still buy a pack of cigarettes at 18 down there.
I'm pretty sure you get one at birth in Florida. You get a pack of cigarettes and a gun.
Yeah, yes. But so I think that's number one. We have to come to a common ground on what is an adult, and then from there, we have to be able to assess situations, assess threat levels, because, again, Tamir Rice is one, but you've also got John Crawford also, right here in Ohio, again, another one where cops came in guns blazing, and the person they shot had no time to react in any form or fashion. And, some would argue, well, that's the thing. You don't want them to be able to react whenever they have a gun. Well, if that reaction is to drop the gun, yes, that's exactly what we want, because that means less bloodshed in the streets. And at the end of the day, a cop's job is to serve and protect, not suffocate and paralyze.
Yeah, I'm with you on all of that. From my perspective, the first thing we need to do is look at how police officers are either reprimanded or what the system looks like for them there. Because here's the thing, and this is going to sound dark, but I believe it to be true. If Tamir Rice happens and that officer is indicted, does whatever, he's not allowed to be a cop ever again, that's improvement. And that's sad that that's where we're at. If we can have it where the cops actually are doing these things and then they receive some kind of actual real world punishment, that doesn't mean getting suspended, doesn't mean losing your job at that particular police force. It means you can't be a cop any longer at the bare minimum. We can go into trying them and putting them in jail and all other stuff later, but they can no longer be a police officer. There has to start being held a line One of the reasons that police deserve respect is because of the idea of what being a police officer is. But if you're not enforcing that standard, then the respect doesn't come with it.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing I said for the
Absolutely.
people in the military. If you're not holding the standard for what it means to be a staff sergeant, tech sergeant, whatever you're going to be, then it doesn't matter and you don't deserve the respect. The respect comes because of what that position represents and what your standard you're supposed to hold. But as soon as you start letting that standard slip, the respect goes with it. And that's where we're at.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, for me, that's where we need to start. I think there's a lot more that it's not that simple. That won't fix the problem in and of itself, but it starts the process. And I think that, for me, is something we could hopefully see in our lifetime. But who knows? Maybe Corona will take me out before I get to see it.
It's far too important of an issue to just go to the wayside at this point. I mean, again, like I said, when I found out that my 13-year-old daughter watched a man be murdered in cold blood by a guy that I tell her is there to serve and protect her, and a guy that I expect her to run to if a man ever puts their hands on her wrong, that's a tough pill to swallow as a dad. Because that position of respect just lost all validity with my 13-year-old. Mm-hmm. She doesn't respect police officers anymore. She doesn't have any compassion towards them, and ultimately it's because it's that one extreme to the other. I mean, you've got people on the right yelling, I support cops, and they're doing it blindly. Well, she's blindly just not supporting any of them. But it does come down to the people on the right that say, well, the rioters and the looters, not the peaceful protesters, because to them, they're not different people. The rioters and the looters are the peaceful protesters also. But, it's kind of, and I know that you heard it with your military background, but the group suffers for the individual, So like, whenever one person throws that Molotov cocktail into, the Louis Vuitton store, the entire group of people, no matter how many of them it is, you see people actually share that recommendation. South Korea sprays all their protesters with dye. Is that what the United States should do too, so that they can arrest them later? Like, yeah, that's what they should do. We should spray people with dye so we can go and arrest them for exercising their rights. Mm-hmm. That you so proudly say you're not going to have a chip injected into you because you're not going to give up your rights. Wait a minute. Mm-hmm. That you didn't want to give them up, but you are. No. That's just a contradicting statement of its own, but ultimately, it's just, like I say, group suffers for the individual. So every time a cop murders a man in cold blood and it is shown on the evening news, the group is going to suffer for the individual, and that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm. What I'd like to see...
I don't know if you guys...
Sorry, go ahead.
So. I don't know if you guys have seen this in Florida. I know that it's been being seen in communities all over the place, but I know that whenever the riots first started in Columbus, mm-hmm. over George Floyd, I remember the most powerful thing I've seen that night was the fact that the ones that were towing the line between cops and protesters were the Crips and the Bloods. Mm-hmm. When we live in a society where the Crips and the Bloods are the ones maintaining order, where have we gone wrong?
Oh man, you've opened up so many things that I feel like I have to respond to. So I'll try to do them in backwards order, which is a terrible idea because I'll forget. But I think a lot of people either aren't aware or maybe forget. But the Crips and the Bloods were actually started for that very purpose. They were started in black and brown communities black communities really for them, those two specific gangs, because the police weren't protecting those communities, because those communities were allowed to be ran amok and everything. Now, I am not saying that the Crips and the Bloods have maintained that kind of mission statement over their life, but I am saying that kind of them getting back to their core values, and hopefully we could see more of that as it continues and everything. But
I agree. I think Nipsey's getting it back there.
Well, was until, unfortunately, Nipsey also lost his life. But yeah, Nipsey was a great example of that. That
mentality.
Well. So, but yeah, see, and as I predicted, I lost my train of thought from the previous, but that's fine. It's okay. It's all good. But I think one of the things that we've seen as well, like you talked about, is the rioters and looters being associated with the protesters. And this is where I start to sound like a right-wing conspiracy theorist, but that's the media's doing, because there have been protests in a lot of cities for a long time after George Floyd happened that just were never covered because there was no rioters and looters, because they kept happening peacefully and it just didn't have anything that was interesting to watch on the news. They're not going to report the same thing for 100 days straight on national news. You know what I mean? So when you see it from that perspective, that's where we go back to what we talked about before with Lily. We've talked about that with just the echo chambers and everything else. When that's what you see and that's what your representation of this whole thing is, then how do you actually get there? How do we actually get people to pay attention to, hey, it's not even a significant minority of that population. And guess what? A lot of those protests ended at like 6 p.m. and it was the rioters and looters who were out after that messed up like the late part of that or whatever. They protested for like 5 hours, and then towards when it got dark, these rioters and looters came out and did that as well. So I just think the conversation becomes very disingenuous because that's what America loves to do. America loves to look at a problem and look at one piece of that problem that shouldn't be happening, and they can point to as some kind of bad side of it, right, and then just wipe it away. Like now we don't have to deal with the problem because there was one person in that group that was doing something bad. Now we don't have to deal with the core issue. We'll just go ahead and say, you're all bad. It's all bad. Stop being bad. And this won't happen anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
so let me ask you your opinion. Let me ask you two questions. We're both on the same topic, but I want to get you to answer them kind of in succession if I can. First of all, what's your idea? What do you know about defunding the police? And then secondly, what is your opinion of the defunding the police? And let me be clear, I have no strong opinion one way or the other, so I'm not like trying to set you up for a gotcha or anything. I just want to know, what do you think? What do you know of it? And then what's your opinion on it?
I think most people hear defund the police and hear just that, and they don't dive into what that means. I think it's a misuse of vocabulary words, really, because I don't think that anybody really thinks that police do not need funding. I really don't think anybody believes that. I believe that everybody thinks that we need to reappropriate the funds and move them. Maybe when dealing with somebody who's mentally ill, maybe not just dispatch police, but also EMS and fire, because those people are more medically oriented to assess the situation. Also, maybe give them the freedom to not only be there, but take charge and take control of that situation. Yes, I have a cop here for my protection, but ultimately he's just here for my protection, and he's not here to do anything. He's not here as an authoritative figure in this, because I have to do this with the training that I have, because cops obviously don't have training to deal with mental health and things like that, which is another topic in itself. So police reform to me means that we need to get more social workers involved, and we need to start diving into the root of the problems that are affecting these lower income communities, and find out, the guy that robbed a convenience store 5 times in a year, what is making him rob the same convenience store? What happened in his life to promote that and make that happen? And what can we do as a society to help him understand that he don't need to rob that store anymore, because if he needs something, we got you.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think one of the things that I've seen is America loves to punish more than they love to solve. And so what we end up in is these constant circles of punishing somebody. So think about it. If a kid's, say, let's just start at 15. They're 15 years old. They get in trouble for, let's say, selling weed or stealing something, whatever the offense is. Well, through our punishment system, now they're more likely to do it again, because you've cut off other avenues for them, because now they've been arrested. Now they have to say they've been arrested on job forms and all those type of things. So what does that person's life actually look like? You're so intent on punishing them for their wrongdoing, which, again, I'm not saying give them a free pass, but I am saying you have to change the way you do it. You call it the correctional system for a reason. It's supposed to actually correct that behavior and make it better, but none of what you're doing actually makes that happen. We first really started to realize this with drug addicts. Drug addicts, when they were constantly just tried and put in jail, does not make their drug addiction go away. And so they just continue on and continue on, and you're not solving the drug addiction problem. You're making it worse. So if you start treating it as more of a public health issue, where you can actually get them corrective behavior, then, maybe they only go to jail once. Maybe they don't go to jail at all. Maybe they just get it fixed easier along the way. And part of what you're saying there with reappropriating the funds is stop making police do a million jobs. Police should be police. Mm-hmm. They're there, like you said, to serve and protect. They're there to enforce the law and those type of things. But instead, because of the way that we've treated them over the course of the past probably 50 years or so, they're everything. They're mental health experts. They come to try to help out people who fall on sidewalks. They do like every single job, and there's just no amount of training is going to make you that good at every one of those tasks. And so I think we have to really start making them police again and stop making them everything else. And that's part of what the whole concept of reappropriating the funds is by making other jobs step up to do that. Police can be more specialized. They can look more actually at what they need to be doing with policing. And I think that would go a long way. But as I said before, I don't have a strong opinion for or against on defund the police. And the reason I say that is because I try to maintain the same characteristic no matter what we're talking about. And my idea for this, for gun violence, for anything you're talking about is research the problem, research solutions, then enact those solutions, and then see how they worked. So if you do through all this research and you come with, hey, defunding the police is the right thing to go in this specific area, go there, reappropriate those funds. Let's see what happens. If you think, no, the police actually just need more training over in this area, right, train them. Let's see what happens. But at the end of the day, I don't give a crap how we get there. It's realistically, I want the solution, not the steps in between, you know?
Right. We just got to get there because it is sad and tragic every single time it happens. And like, look, I think we can both agree that there's going to be times where there's going to be somebody that commits a crime and puts himself in a situation where they are shot and killed by a cop. That happens. It's going to continue to happen because civilians are always going to be civilians. That happens. What we have to do is change that when that person is not armed, that both people get to at least still live through that night. You know, maybe they don't go home, but they go to jail and whatever. But, you know, there's just too many times where we sit there and we look at something and we're like, I don't know. And if that's your answer, I don't know, to when the cop shoots them, no matter the evidence, no matter any of that stuff, it was probably, there was probably something else better we could have done. And again, like you said, whether that's training, whether that's having, you know, minimizing the job of a cop, because it's been maximized for years. It's insane. Bring back mental health institutions if we have to, you know. That's scary too, because then we're committing people that don't necessarily want to be, but I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. But I think what you're ultimately talking about is that there is no grand solution. There's no great solution, but we have to be committed to trying to find one. And I think that's the biggest issue I have with certain people who are looking at the situation we're in today and saying that, no, this is fine. That's the only really opinion that I have a hard time really dealing with, is because you're saying, no, this where we are now is fine. Don't do something bad. The cops won't come, you know, don't resist, blah, 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 all those different types of things they put out.
And in the same sentence telling us that we live in a free country. What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A country full of rights. Because if you look at like you said, the John Crawford situation, again, open carry state of Ohio. But beyond that, he's in the store where he's purchasing I think it was a pellet gun, right? It wasn't a real weapon. But even if it was a real weapon, he wasn't purchasing, he was just looking at it.
He was just, look, here's my thing. I believe this man was messing around with his girlfriend. This has never come out. So this is literally my thoughts on this whole situation.
And I think part of this did come out. I thought I did hear this. I know what you're talking about.
I think there's 15 minutes of video where this guy walks into Walmart. He's on the phone. His girl drops him off. He's walking around the store. To know Beaver Creek Walmart, I mean, the sporting goods is in the back of the store, where is in the front corner of the store. So, you know, he goes to sporting goods and literally just walking around on the phone. He's a guy that is not thinking about anything that's going on around him, but what's going on in this phone call. I think he's literally trying to figure out, okay, how do I be the player that I'm trying to be on my girls and not get busted? And as he's doing this, he's walking around, he picks up this BB gun that is not in packaging, sold by Walmart, and he's just walking around with it. He never points it at anybody, he never aims it at anybody, and then some hillbilly calls the cops, states that he's pointing a gun at somebody and pulling the trigger, and they need cops immediately. A long gun. They show up. He's standing in the pet food aisle for 7.5 minutes. not thinking about anything, just kind of waving around, like in his hands, not pointing it at anybody. When out of nowhere, you see two cops come in, and you've got about another 2 seconds of video at that point from where I guess they announce themselves and tell them to drop the gun, but at that same moment visualize themselves to him, and he realizes there's some crazy shit going on. And he makes a move like any of us would whenever two cops are coming around the corner with AR-15s. He threw the gun down to the ground, and he tried to run and was shot in the back and killed in Walmart before he ever knew what was happening.
And see, that's the type of stuff we're talking about when I go back to, if you want to tell me those situations are hard to deliberate, they're hard to figure out and all that stuff for both sides of it, okay, I'll accept that. But how are those police officers still on the job, or a job in general? How are they not fired? How are they not? Because that's your very job, is to show up, assess a situation, and to determine a threat. Again, if we're saying that in a store where this weapon is sold, you're a threat, then how are we ever buying weapons again? For all the Second Amendment rights people, how is that not an infringement of your Second Amendment right? If you can't even buy the weapon in the store it's sold without being shot and seen as a threat with it, that's insane. It makes no sense.
Absolutely insane.
So, but all right, not to end on that heavy note or anything, but sorry, go ahead.
But to go back to that though,
mm-hmm.
and you know, and my buddy in the park the other day actually threw it back at me. So who do you fault for that? They went in, they assessed the situation based off of a 911 caller. Who do you fault?
In that particular situation, I absolutely fault the police. And here's why I'll say that. You are coming to the situation. You can position yourself tactically where you can issue verbal commands and not put yourself in an unreasonable amount of danger. You're also telling this gentleman, hey, police, drop the weapon. What is your expectation of how they react? You are in control. You have to be. If not, then why are you a police officer? If you can't address a situation with an potentially armed combatant, then you shouldn't be doing that job. It's that simple.
I don't care what age it is. If you can't pull up in a community park in Cleveland, Ohio, and assess the situation with Tamir Rice while in cover, I don't care if you have to be in cover. You're a cop. Being a cop demands crazy situations, and sometimes that means putting yourself in cover.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get on the side of that car. What do you have? Cleveland Police Department, drop your weapon. Give him a chance. Give these men or children a chance to drop the gun and do the right thing, because right now they're not presented the chance. I fault Walmart on that case, and I fault the 911 caller initially. Ultimately, Walmart should have had that gun in packaging and secured. And the person, the 911 caller, essentially filed a false police report by making that accusation that he did. Now, that being said, it's the job of the police to assess that situation, not take a civilian's word for it. You know, if I tell them there's a bomb in a building, you know, they're going to assess that situation before they go running in guns blazing. So why wouldn't they do that whenever it's a man armed with a BB gun in a store where it's sold? It doesn't make sense.
Well, and again, just the one point I try to go back to, again, for the Second Amendment rights people, which I agree with, it's an open carry state. You're not doing anything illegal by possessing this weapon. You are in a state that allows you to just for no reason, for whatever reason you want, walk down the street with this weapon, and you're allowed. So if you're saying that, then how is this person in either of these situations, how are they in danger, or are they an endangering person when they're completely in compliance with the laws? So if you're telling me that, you're telling me that we need to change the laws and we don't need to be open carry anymore, which I think, oh, no, I need to open carry. It's like, well, then this needs to be adjudicated appropriately then. So, but
absolutely.
So, all right, man. I don't want to end on a negative note or anything like that. So tell me something positive that has happened to you in 2020. You know, give me some good news.
Man, we have financially thrived, my wife and I. Financially, we've never been in a better position. I'm selling my house right now, buying a new house. I mean, it's all of that. And then, like, again, you know, just having that time with my kids, man, just enjoying every minute of watching my kids grow in the early stages when we don't get this stuff, especially dads. Dads are always forced to go to work and do all this. And I'm proud enough to say I'm not the breadwinner in my family. My wife definitely makes more money than I do, but it's nice to know that I've had the opportunity to have the time with my kids and my wife too. She's not missed a beat in income all year long, and it's been awesome. So it's that would be my success for 2020, man. It's been financial gains, and just if we're not gaining something through 2020 and through coronavirus, if we're not picking something up, if we're not valuing the time with the people that we're around, we're really missing out on this whole shit, because it sucks. 2020 has been a rough year. Coronavirus is bullshit. But ultimately, like, the silver lining is that it gives us the time to do all the things that we always wish we had the time to do. And if we're not doing those things right now, we're missing out.
Gotcha. You just made it a lot harder to not give me at least a couple grand off that Audi when I come buy it from you, though, because I know you're doing well. I know you can take it. So do me a favor before we go. Summarize this conversation for me in one sentence. What do you think this conversation, the overall summary, would be?
Communication. Communicate with people. Reach out to people that you think you disagree with. Have the conversations that you think are going to be difficult. And just love everybody, man. No matter where they're at, no matter what. It's so much. I'll take a quote from what is it? Is it American History X? Hate is baggage.
Yeah. I think so. I think that's what it's from. I'm pretty sure.
It is. Hate is baggage. It's so much easier to love people. And even whenever you have to have hard conversations, it's easier to just have those conversations than to harbor hate and discontent. So have the conversations with the people that you think you disagree with, because I think that everybody will find that I think we all agree a lot more than what we care to admit, but we just don't want to feel like we're giving up on ourselves, and admitting that you may have visualized something differently before isn't a blow to your own self.
I'm with it, man. So thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it, bro. I really appreciate you sitting when it looks like a beautiful day out there and just chilling on your porch and taking some time to catch up.
I told you it looked like it was going to rain.
Nah, not in Florida. Not in Florida. Florida, it's going to rain.
Baby. It's the Midwest, baby. I love it.
All right, boss. I'll catch you next time, man. Take it easy.
Definitely. Stay in touch, man.
Thanks for checking out Starting Nowhere. If you liked today's episode, make sure that you like and subscribe and leave us a comment to let us know what you thought.